Hello, this is Sergio Marrero, and we are here at RBL1 Live with Heather Hiles. She is co-founder and CEO, or founder and CEO of Imminent Equity, a private equity fund, and she has also raised over $12 million and found for her previous startup that she founded, that is PathBright. And she's going to walk us through that journey and tell us what she's working on now. But thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll dive in for the audience. I know, just to give a little bit more of an overview for those that don't know, Heather is a boss. I love she has done so many things. So from graduating from UC Berkeley, she has her MBA from Yale. She's been on the board of education, and prior to starting her venture and selling it, worked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, also been president and CEO of Fulbright College, and now there's more in the works, which I'm excited to dive into. So thank you for making the time to share your story with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So first, I wanted to start off with PathBright. Can you share a little bit more with the audience about what is PathBright, and what work that they do to help students achieve success?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I have been in and out of kind of education and learning spaces and workforce development in various forms, beginning from my real professional life, which started at age 18 for me when I got accepted to UC Berkeley, but needed a full-time job to work my way through school. And PathBright was an unexpected technology. Well, I knew I was going to start up a technology company, and I could kind of tell you how I got to that point. But I didn't think that I was building an education technology when I first started iterating with PathBright. And that is not uncommon, as you know, for most startups to start with an MVP and continue to iterate as you find your true customer. And that certainly was my experience with PathBright. So in the year 2010, I believe, I started to really think that I wanted to launch a tech company. And at the time, what I wanted to build was a consumer user-friendly version of SharePoint, which back in the day was the best way, and I was forced to use it for a client, of sharing media, multimedia privately amongst groups. So I wanted to make a really cool way that consumers could use that kind of experience rather than enterprise kind of awkward software. So as I built the MVP, I built it back then in Flash and Flex. But I, worked with some friends who were engineers, and they helped me put the prototype together. When we launched the app to see, who would respond to it, we had so many different scenarios of people sharing photos, family, blah, blah, blah. Well, come to find out, teachers were using it in the classroom, K-12 teachers, because they could privately, securely share media when it's dangerous and you can't just be on the internet, right? So that made me step back and think, okay, on a personal level, it has been my personal mission to help people achieve their academic and their professional goals. And so although I've had a great experience with e-learning solutions back in the 1990s, helping women get from welfare into living wage jobs, I was still very skeptical that technology, because ed tech has been so historically awful, that it could actually affect learning outcomes. And so then I learned about this tech. So when I saw the teachers using it, I thought, gosh, I really have to dig deeper. I spent 2011 really doing a lot of research and watching our users. And because I launched the test app in 2011. And what I realized was there was a technology called ePortfolios that had been built, and most people were making them on WordPress back then, but they were online blogs, and they were improving learning outcomes. Longitudinal studies had proven that people improve their critical thinking skills, their writing skills, and then also their meta-learning and metacognition by using these e-portfolios. So it's like, that's what all of our Black, brown, underachieving or undereducated folks really need. You know, historically, traditional public education systems, K-12 as well as higher ed, have not done a great job of serving our needs and are educating us properly and preparing us for the world of work. And so this became really important to me. How can the least resourced folks get access to the best technology to optimize their learning outcomes? And they should get it for free, by the way, in their public education experiences. And so that's what I was carrying around. And so I decided to fast forward some, I decided to make the first enterprise-wide cloud-based portfolio platform. So PathBright is the first digital cloud-based portfolio system. And lucky for me, although I am an alum of UC Berkeley, I tracked down the top researcher of e-portfolios. She is Dr. Helen Chen out of Stanford University. I went to show her my prototype just to get her input. I was like, here it is. It was very inspired by the Matrix, and it had a timeline interface, all this stuff. And I showed it to her, and she's like, stop. I'm like, okay. She's like, hold on, I want to take you to somebody else. It turned out to be Tom Black, who was the registrar and vice provost of student affairs at Stanford. And he said, after looking at my prototype and demo, he's like, we're your first customer. We're going to use PathBright at Stanford University. You're going to have to build an enterprise system. It's going to have the security levels to handle that we require of Google, to handle secure data, because I'm going to put secure transcripts into the portfolios so students can have access to their transcripts for life. And then I went out of that meeting thinking, oh my God, I thought I was building a little app. Here I am, I'm going to build enterprise software for colleges and universities to use, and I'm going to have to raise venture capital. And that's what set me about raising institutional money. Yeah. That's
amazing. And at the time, right, you were born in Los Angeles, correct?
Right.
And then at that time, were you in the San Francisco Bay Area, or did you move there?
So I was born in LA. I was recruited to play basketball at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
That's how I even got introduced to the campus. And when I went up there, I was 16 and I toured the campus, and I'm like, I am in love with this place. There are people protesting apartheid in Sproul Hall. We went across the street to the cafe, and there's people from Africa and Europe and all over. And I'm like, this is my jam. This is it. And the hippies on Telegraph. I was like, I'm all in for all of it. And I went home and I said, Mom, I don't want to, do any more recruitment tours. I'm going to Cal. She's like, great. I said, the thing is, I don't want to. And so that was my whole scholarship. And the reason I didn't want to play basketball is because there was no WNBA when I went to Cal. I was there from 86 to 90. So there was no WNBA. There was nothing after basketball. And I wanted to be involved in all the political stuff. I didn't want to be in a gym all the time. So anyhow, I don't think my mother necessarily thought I'd get admitted, but she's like, okay, go for it. So I applied, I got accepted. And that's why I had to get a full-time job. So I moved to Berkeley at age 17. I started at Cal, and I was lucky enough to find this amazing nonprofit founded by a former Black Panther, Rodney Stevenson, may he rest in peace, who had matriculated from UC Berkeley, and he was taking the model of the Black Panthers back to education. So what he did was he had UC students that we trained up, and then had them tutoring kindergarten through third graders who are already falling behind academically. And we got their test scores up, we got them after school snacks, I helped their families make their kids more successful. It was one of the best well-run nonprofits I've ever seen to this day in my life. And it was very, very effective. And so that really taught me about the, what we now call the achievement gap, and how some people just don't get access to the right information, the right tools to be their best selves. They don't even know the world of possibilities oftentimes that are available to them. And so, 30 years later, I'm still trying to help people get access to the information and tools that they want so that they can achieve their best lives, live out their dreams.
I love that. That's an inspiring story, talking about how you ended up from LA to Berkeley and off to build PathBright. And for those that don't know, you had a wealth of educational experience before building PathBright. From being in the ecosystem, over a decade before. Can you share it? When that clicked for you? I'm selling enterprise ed tech software, and you said I'm going to raise venture capital. Can you share at the time? I know this is 2000 and 2012 2013 timeframe, so
Right.
So not too long ago, but
long enough.
But after now we're recognizing the need to address the inequity. But can you talk about the challenge of raising capital? How did you amass $12 million to build out PathBright?
Yeah, it was very hard. The way that I had worked, so I am a serial entrepreneur, and a serial social entrepreneur is probably the most accurate way to say it, because I've launched a couple nonprofits that became large scale. SF Works, where we got 11,000 women trained and hired into living wage jobs from welfare. Earn, which helps low-income people save for assets. It was the first time I got to build a technology platform as a technophile. And that was helping low-income people save for their first assets to break the cycle of poverty. But it worked like a 401k, where we had to track each person's account, match the money that they were saving, then send it to the place where the asset was being acquired. And San Francisco's had over 30,000 San Franciscans who are low income acquire assets through Earn. But then I had a consultancy where I was consulting to a bunch of philanthropists, and a lot of them were technologists. Either they had, been in the boom days of Microsoft and then retired, and so they were individual philanthropists, or they were technologists who were active VCs. And so I got to know the culture and the people. And one of the great things about that is I realized that they weren't any smarter than me. So yes, I had studied economics and statistics and politics and stuff like that at Cal, but I had been to business school, and I understood finance pretty well. And so I was like, there's nothing here, and I really enjoy new technologies. So I was like, I can start a tech company. And I think that was one of the pivotal experiences for me, is knowing the VCs on Sand Hill Road, knowing entrepreneurs who had been successful, knowing technologists, and realizing that they didn't have anything that I didn't possess also. And so that gave me permission, if you will, to decide to start a tech company. The last thing I did before I launched PathBright in 2012 was I worked with Silicon Valley, SB2, Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund. And again, all Silicon Valley technologists who were philanthropic. So it really helped me figure that stuff out and try different software stuff. But when I sold that first deal to Stanford, I realized what I needed to do was lean into my strong suits, because I know how foreign I am and was to the folks of Silicon Valley. Like when I rolled into, and Kara Swisher asked me to write a post about this, a blog about it for Recode in 2015 that's still out there, that is about how foreign I felt. I remember writing it at the airport, and in the Austin airport, coming out of South by Southwest. But like I remember being at TechCrunch and launching at the TechCrunch demo, and I'm looking at 2,000 people, and they're almost all white and Asian men. And I wasn't seeing any Black Americans really there, and thinking how sad that was, and feeling very, very alone. And I'm used to feeling different from everybody. That's been my whole kind of personal journey. So it wasn't unfamiliar to me, but it's just like, it's not right, is what it felt like back then. So I knew I had to play to my strengths. I have a deep understanding of the market, as you said, the domain of education and learning. I also had, I have a lot of strong suits and relationships in the world of finance, because right out of business school, that's where I was. So long story short, the best education technologists, VC companies, investors were in New York. And so I wound up getting my lead investor to be the top, like Series A and A to B round investors in ed tech. And they had the most, exits, IPOs, et cetera. So that was really fortunate for me, but that's because I leaned into my expertise. I also got ACT, the testing company, which is a nonprofit, but sitting on lots of cash, to be one of the investors as well. And so that was the move, I think, that helped me get past these big barriers. Yeah,
that's amazing. The way figuring out, like you said, that there may be people that or institutions that can be investors that you wouldn't think otherwise. And then also, okay. I read in your previous article you talk about getting an investor that could be the acquirer, which is a great strategy as well.
And that comes with some warnings too, because truth be told, it worked out very well for my investors and for me. And in ed tech, getting an acquisition of any type is you're truly a needle in a haystack anyway. Mm-hmm. So I promised myself I wouldn't be stubborn, and I would play the best hand I could with the hand I was dealt. But truth be told, I would have preferred if I could have gone from the education space, raised a big B round, and gone into the enterprise space, because I believe portfolios today even can still be a better way of doing kind of evidence-based performance evaluations. And they're also a great tool for hiring people, because you get to see their actual work, and they really have to curate and tell a story through a portfolio that your LinkedIn profile and a traditional resume just don't do. And so portfolios have a lot of opportunities for the enterprise space. But because I had a strategic investor, and we were blowing the socks off their sales and also their engineering department, we were very important to their engineering team. They did not want us to continue to grow and they grow out of their space. They really wanted us for them. And so it's been good for PathBright. We have over 6 million people on the platform. They're, job seekers and college students, and obviously the colleges and universities themselves using it. But part of me wishes I could have continued with PathBright to build it to become a multi-billion-dollar company. And so life is still I have a lot of life to live still, and so we still have the opportunity to do that. But yeah, so there are downsides and there are wonderful opportunities that come with strategic investment, but you need to be eyes wide open about who they are and what they're going to want long term with your company. Yeah,
that's great. And I know from there, like after selling the company, you moved into more of the investing space. Can you share more of how that transition was, moving from the builder to the funder?
Yep. So I was after I was a senior advisor to Cengage Learning, the company that bought my company, for about a year. And I was working on actually a book about how to not only hire diverse talent, because I think a lot of people are figuring that out, but really how to make for a diverse work environment that not only retains diverse talent, but really helps people self-actualize and brings out the best in a diverse workforce. And I'm just getting back to try to finish up that book now. But back then I was working on the book, pretty committed to that. And for about a year, I guess, people from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation were trying to recruit me to help them realize their equity agenda there, and to ramp up one of their portfolios of grant making and investing into education and education technologies. And so after a long time of trying to refer other people, I was listening to what they were talking about and worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for about 2 years, and was able to turn around this pretty big portfolio, which was aimed at investing in solutions that really improve the outcomes of underrepresented minorities in college and university, meaning we get more people to graduate college and colleges and universities who are underrepresented. So I was investing in fintech, as well as advising technologies, as well as learning technologies, et cetera. And what was great is that I was also an advisor to Melinda Gates's Pivotal Ventures, which is investing, it's a huge fund investing in women entrepreneurs. And so that gave me a lot of time to work with the investment committee at the Gates Foundation. I also helped build an evidence base for a whole new portfolio, which is now called Equitable Futures, which is over at Gates. And it's the first non-education portfolio that Bill and Melinda Gates have funded. So it was very gratifying to be able to defend and work with them to get a whole new portfolio launched, domestically speaking. And so that was a great learning experience. And then I realized I am probably better suited to be operational and to be building stuff than I am to be investing in others to do it, or I need to have a little bit of both in my life. And that's what I've been trying to get the balance right on right now. And so, but it was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience. And it really got me very focused on how you build the right investment thesis, the right justifications for your investment thesis. And then I love doing due diligence. That's probably my favorite part. So I was very prolific, and Bill Gates is very prolific in terms of analyzing technologies. So I would maybe once a quarter be able to present like 30 different products to him, and he just goes through them. So it was a really wonderful experience.
That's amazing. And then how did what led you to take on the role of taking PathBright College online?
Well, okay, so it actually wasn't me taking PathBright online. It was actually doing an experiment to do a startup from absolute scratch to in the public sector, to launching something at scale. And this was important for me to try, because at the end of the day, I would like for educational systems and institutions to be more responsive and more and faster acting to the needs of our people. So here's what it was: is there was something called the California Online Community College, actually envisioned by our former governor of California, Jerry Brown. And when Gavin Newsom became governor, I was also his communications director when he ran for mayor and wrote a lot of his policy papers. That's how he asked me to be on the school board in San Francisco. But the legislature had committed with Jerry Brown $260 million over 7 years to standing up the first online community college that was supposed to be statewide and supposed to serve the needs of then 10 million underemployed Californians. I think we have many, many more now, but basically working poor people. And so that's I'm even more passionate about workforce development, meaning getting people hired into jobs, probably than I am even about education. And that's saying a lot for me. So I took that on because you tell an entrepreneur that, hey, we have already raised the money for you to realize your dream platform, and it's hard to resist. So my friend Michael Crow, who is the president of ASU, which is nearly a $4 billion enterprise at this point in time, he called me on the phone. I was on a plane heading to my home in DC, and he said, Heather, you have to talk to the chancellor at the California Community College System. You're the only person I know who can stand up this online skills training platform for Californians. And I was super dubious. I told them all of my beliefs. I don't want to perpetuate an oligopoly owned by just Google and some publishers. I want to build a platform of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I want to bring in a whole new cadre of developers and product people who are people of color, who are serving their own community needs, because I think that's when the best tools are built. And they hired me, and I was shocked. So I was the chancellor and the founding CEO of PathBright College. First thing I did was take it, make a name for it and build a brand. So it went from California Online Community College, which is the worst acronym you ever heard, to PathBright. And I think we have a decent image and brand there. And by October 1 of last year, we were able to open our virtual doors and enroll about 500 people in the first month. And the first day we enrolled 45 people. No community college has ever enrolled one person in one day, let alone 45 people, because you have to go through a whole process. The platform worked. We had 3 training programs kind of set up. And the best news was 50% of our starting folks were Black and brown. And so that's way over indexing any community college or any other college in California for Black and brown representation. So I was thrilled. What happened, and the reason I'm not there anymore and I resigned in January, is that unfortunately the traditional governmental approaches led by and driven by a lot of union influence really put the brakes on us innovating. They didn't want non-traditional instructor roles where the tutor it's like a flipped classroom where the tutor and the teachers are more facilitating learning rather than leading it. They didn't want us teaching non-credential opportunities. They didn't want us teaching job skills, and they really didn't want us teaching job skills and getting people hired into jobs that weren't unionized. But at the same time, a lot of the unions are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars with working poor members, but won't invest in their upskilling. And so I would get these talking tos and these threats, honestly, at times, by these old white men from unions who didn't want me in my job. I got to a point where I didn't feel secure or safe. And I had to pull out, and it broke my heart. I've watched them dismantle the college. They just dismantled more people, eliminated people. They've walked away from the mission of getting people hired. They walked away from teaching people job skills, and they're just a traditional community college again. So the sad part is it would make a great Harvard Business School case study, honestly, about how the government is unfortunately not yet prepared to start up and innovate. And they're not yet built to serve the needs of today. And I think, unfortunately, what I've seen starting, in March with the pandemic is that none of our public education systems are prepared for serving our students online. I made sure that every single learner we worked with had a free, we had a lending library of Chromebooks with MiFis locked into them so they could have free internet access 24/7. And loaded with the G Suite, loaded with the content delivery systems, loaded with the job training content. And now we see all these kids who can't get proper instruction and education because they don't have the right devices at home. They don't have access to the internet. And it breaks my heart. And that's why I'm back in the fold and investing in and running job training programs that are training people. We've got out of this program called Momentum at Morehouse, which is funded by the group that I'm working with, OHUB Futures. We just graduated a class of 23 Black and brown people who most of them have not only undergraduate degrees, a lot of them have master's degrees, but they can't get the skills to get coding jobs properly yet, and they can't get hired. And so what we're doing, we just finished a full stack training coding program, and we're getting these people hired and employed into their first technical jobs. But I've talked to training companies throughout the country, and the majority of them, even if it's a 12-month boot camp and everybody completes it, they can get the white men and the Asian folks hired. They can't get Black and brown folks hired. They have the same skills, and it's just heartbreaking, and it's unacceptable. So we've got to fix it. And what I really know from PathBright is that it starts with the real employers. So what we've got to do is we've got to build comprehensive DE&I, not only educational services for these companies, but we have to then help them execute and implement, which means they need to be able to get attached to and matched with the right talent who are prepared for their jobs throughout the country. So we're building the first national solution for employers to get their DE&I lives together, and then also hire the right talent at every level of the organization.
That's amazing. And I mean, you're working on all the pieces and important problems, and it really speaks to. I appreciate your candor in talking about the real challenges of innovating in the edtech space. I've been an edtech founder before, and it's the long sales cycles and the bureaucracy. And really, what one thing I say to people quite frequently, I said that the education space has so many stakeholders with different interests. It doesn't operate like other spaces. So I said, if it operated like, let's say, electronics or finance, we'd be looking to do more with cheaper, better, faster, right? Like
exactly.
we instead
and that's not at all how it works, as you know.
Yeah, no, we'd be and people like, what does that look like in education? It means learning what, like, instead of getting another degree that takes longer, you'd be learning more in a shorter period of time for less money, right? And people are like, I don't understand what that looks like. And that's, I guess I think the boot camps, the online learning, the what you're working on, it speaks to that. And definitely, I agree wholeheartedly, has to better tie to jobs, to employment, because yeah, go ahead.
And no, a couple things about that. First of all, you're right. It used to be healthcare and education were both such skewed sectors that they just weren't. They didn't. The regular market dynamics did not apply there. And then when the Affordable Care Act happened, healthcare got better. It got more efficient. It's not better, it's still not working for a majority of people, but it got more efficient than before. Education until now has been really controlled by the government, because it's the governmental sector that funds it. And so it's the governmental sector that was keeping it really inefficient. And unfortunately, my experience with the unions in this particular thing, they work hand in glove with a lot of governmental organizations and really suppress a lot of the best that can come out. And the publishers for a long time had such an oligopoly that they either squashed just by outselling everything that was trying to come up, every innovation, or in my case, they acquired if they can't squash it. But I remember Cengage Learning, the first time I was at their big annual conference, they were patting themselves on the back for being on the cloud, basically. And I was like, this is 2015, what is going on? If Facebook did that, people would be like, throwing tomatoes at them. And so it's just like, and so now when you see Maryland County had to shut down its school year early because Blackboard wasn't stable enough and couldn't serve their students, I'm like, this is an embarrassment beyond embarrassment. And a lot of the teachers have been brainwashed to try and keep the demands as low and depressed as possible, just bad dynamics that sell everybody short. But who misses out? It's the people who don't have money, can't go to good private schools, who don't have their own equipment, and so yeah, its time has come, and I think it's because of the pandemic and hopefully some of the civil unrest that things cannot go back to how they've been, and we have to push for better right now. And in the employer world, in the hiring world, I can't focus on the training businesses. What I need to do is just facilitate them getting their talent matched up. But I've got to work with the employers, because that's where the hiring has to happen. And we have to demand that employers, large-scale companies from the board of directors down, represent the diversity of this country. They need to reflect their customer base, which is Americans. And that's what I think we should expect.
Love that. And I would say on a closing note, what can, people hearing this, that they're what can they do to support this kind of movement toward efficient, accessible education, toward jobs and this future that you're talking about?
Yeah, so there are a ton of things that we can do. The first thing we've got to do is everybody's got to vote. And I know it sounds basic and everybody's talking about it right now, but it's no joke. If we don't have a different administration that is accountable to us, we've got to get the Biden administration in for January. And then we've got to hold our legislators, our governors, our mayors, our president and vice president accountable to who got them elected. And we've got to get them to hold companies accountable to the diversity on their boards of directors and the equity that they share. We've got to hold people accountable. We as families, for example, Black and brown families, a lot of our kids are getting the first college-ready education they can by going to charter schools. Well, a lot of unions don't like charter schools, and so they're against it. We've got to make sure the Biden administration makes room for, and that there's funding for charter schools, because that's the pathway for so many Black and brown, poor, especially kids. And we've got to stand for what serves us, and we've got to put voice to it. We've got to demand accountability from our elected officials and from the big employers who get our dollars. And so that's what everybody can do. If you want to get more involved with what I'm doing, I'm helping this ecosystem of Black and brown people called OHUB, and helping launch this company called OHUB Futures that is going to help do this diversity education and talent sourcing for big employers.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Heather.
Sure.
And for everyone watching, this was Rebel1 Live. And please join us in to hear more CEOs and investors like Heather making change and also building wealth for our community. So thanks again, Heather, for sharing your story today.
Of course.